Having broken the mould of British politics last Thursday, the pieces are still flying sharp and vicious in the media, which cannot even begin to accept the scale of the victory we scored last Thursday and the implications of it, even more importantly. Well, nastiness is the order of the day, crawling all over my life, my wife's life, going back to her university days in the University of Vermont, and pictures that she put on Facebook when she was 14, holding peanut butter in a store. I mean, you wouldn't believe the level of activity going on amongst the British media to do anything, everything that they can to mitigate, to minimize the scale of the victory that we won. But as we say in Scotland, facts are chiels that win a ding. Facts don't change, and the facts are these. Not only did I win a smashing victory, scoring more votes than all of the other major parties of the state put together, but in second place came a hitherto unknown local independent, unknown outside Rochdale. Of course, he's a worthy citizen of the town, but never mentioned in any of the by-election coverage, never mentioned in the bookmakers' odds. He came second. That means for the first time in the history of British politics, the two big parties of the state did not come, not first, not second. The Conservatives came third, Labour came fifth, and both of them got a tiny handful of votes. So between me and the Independent, we scored 60% of all the votes cast. And despite efforts to say otherwise, it was not a low turnout. It was higher than the previous two by-elections in the country. It was a turnout that spoke for the people of Rochdale. And if, as the media say, I fought the campaign on Gaza, then Gaza won. If, as the media say, I fought the election on a criticism of the two front benches, Labour and Conservative, in their slavish support for Netanyahu's genocide in Gaza, then we won, and the government and the opposition were defeated. And that, I think, is what they find most difficult to deal with. I can tell you for the first time, this is breaking news, the Workers' Party now has more than 300 applications to stand for Parliament at the expense of the candidate. Our party is too small to even fully absorb the tripling, quadrupling of our size in the last 4 weeks. We can't pay people's general election campaigns. So it's a precondition that you have to pay for your own election campaign, and I can tell you for the first time, more than 300 people want to do it. There are also hundreds of people who want to stand as independent candidates at the general election. So it is distinctly possible that 400, 500 constituencies at the general election will be contested either by Workers' Party candidates or by independents, many of them eminent and extremely worthy independents. That changes everything. They were all bowling along, you see, that the old uni party, Tweedledee, Tweedledum, two cheeks of the same backside, would sail home one or the other. What would it matter? Lesser of two evils, greater of two evils, who could decide which was which? But they thought it was going to be political business as usual, and it is now abundantly clear that all bets are off. I could go through, it would bore international viewers, I could go through some of the leading figures in Keir Starmer's shadow cabinet, if we can glorify it with that title, who have small majorities at the general election that we are going to make disappear. Even the deputy leader of the Labour Party, a woman called Angela Rayner, but we call her Runner, even she has a majority of just 4,000. And there are at least 15,000 supporters of my point of view in her constituency. So we intend to put the deputy leader of the Labour Party out of business. And there are dozens, scores of other. I was going to call them big names, but they're not even big names in their own street, but they hold big titles as shadow minister for this and that, and we are going to rain on their parade. They thought it was going to be business as usual, but a most unusual thing has occurred, and it's this: that like daffodils in springtime, like Topsy, out of the earth has emerged a totally new landscape, a landscape of people who've been taken for granted for too long, a landscape of people who say this far, no further, a landscape of people, millions of them I'm talking about. I'm talking at least 2 millions, maybe 3 millions, maybe more than that, who say neither of these two big parties represent us. We have voted for them at election after election, generation after generation, but we are never going to do it again. The mold is well and truly broken. And what the implications of that for politics are is beginning to run like a shiver along the green benches of the House of Commons, looking for a spine to run up. I was on my feet every single question at Prime Minister's questions today. But inexplicably, as the Member of Parliament with the freshest mandate in the land, the Member of Parliament who was attacked in an unprecedented, literally unprecedented way by the Prime Minister of the state, standing on a lectern like a little street corner Napoleon, denounced my electors, denounced my victory, denounced my voters, denounced just last Friday at the state's expense, a purely party political affair. I'll be looking into the public expenditure implications of that. But having been attacked by the Prime Minister, no less, for the first time in history, an MP, his election, attacked by the Prime Minister, I still inexplicably failed to catch the Speaker's eye. But they can't shut me up forever. I have a right to a maiden speech, and I've asked for that to be on Tuesday. So for next Wednesday's show, you'll be able to see some of the highlights of it. And some of the things I'm saying here now, I will have to say to the House of Commons, even though they don't want to hear it. But in any case, they won't silence me, because I'm talking to far more people right now and over the course of the next few days than any speech in Parliament is ever likely to attain. Our show last Sunday was the biggest show we have ever had in all the years of the mother of all talk shows. We had 677 live callers calling into the show. No television show in history has had 677 live callers. There will be 3 million views at least of last Sunday's show by the time next Sunday's show comes around. And when you add this Wednesday's show, well, we're truly in record-breaking areas. Our following subscriptions on YouTube, my following on all my social media platforms has all gone through the roof. The Workers' Party is at least 3 times, maybe 4 times bigger than it was 4 weeks ago, quite apart from the hundreds of people who want to stand for Parliament under our banner. The number of people excited, the best people in the land, excited by what happened in Rochdale is significant. I got my parliamentary term underway by tabling a motion yesterday hailing the beginning of a Rochdale revival. And the clearest sign, the first daffodil of that Rochdale revival, is the reopening of the world-famous, soon-to-be world-famous, Town Hall. For those of you who know it, it was where many of the scenes of Peaky Blinders were filmed. It was so magnificent that Hitler intended to deconstruct it brick by brick and take it to Berlin. It is a tremendous piece of renovation, a tremendous tribute to the town of Rochdale and all of the people involved in its renovation. I hope that many of you will come and visit me there. We'll be holding activities there all the time. It's available for the public to hire. So I put down a motion hailing it in the House of Commons. Right at this moment, not a single other Member of Parliament has signed it. That's how sore they all are. I haven't had any unpleasantness from my former and now renewed parliamentary colleagues, but the father of the House, the longest serving member of the House, did walk me in up to the Speaker's chair. It was only later I realized, although my wife realized it immediately, that he was actually wearing a Ukrainian flag around his neck as a tie. It can't be called a tie. It's far too big and wide for that. It was a Ukrainian flag around his neck as he walked me to the Speaker's table so I could swear in as a member of Parliament. There are a number of constitutional conundrums emerged yesterday. First of all, as a result of a decision in the British Parliament in 1688, I'm not making that up, in 1688, a newly elected member must be walked to the Speaker's table by two members of Parliament, one from each side of the House. So what would happen if none of the parliamentarians agreed to walk a new member up to the table? Well, that would mean that the election had no validity, that the member could not sit down, could not speak, could not ask questions, and the people of the constituency concerned would not be represented in Parliament. Now, if that's not an anachronism that needs to be cleaned up right away, I really don't know what is. The second and more significant one is that I was forced to pledge allegiance to King Charles and all his heirs and successors. Better hope that Prince Andrew doesn't emerge, given all the mystery surrounding the royal family right at this moment. We better hope that next in line doesn't suddenly become Prince Andrew, because I've had to swear allegiance to him. Now, I'm a Republican. I don't believe in kings and queens and lines of succession. But if I had not sworn that allegiance, I would not have been allowed to become a member of Parliament in 2024. That's the reason the Irish Republicans cannot take their seats in the House of Commons, because they're not prepared to lie about it. From my point of view, it would be foolhardy in the extreme to lose the opportunity to be a member of the British Parliament with all the platform that that brings, the ability to represent the good people of Rochdale, just because I had to swear allegiance to a king I don't believe in, and his heirs and successors that I don't even know who they may turn out to be. But there's just two anachronisms that I point up for the constitutional nerds amongst you that need to be attended to. Let me turn to the big issues of the day. The Houthis in Yemen have sent a letter to Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister, saying that the only way in which they will give safe passage to the Royal Navy to try to salvage the sunk British oil tanker in the Red Sea is if Rishi Sunak sends an aid convoy by land through the gates at Rafah and into the occupied Palestinian territory of Gaza. And that he requires, Mr. Al-Houthi requires a signed statement from me vouchsafing the sincerity of Rishi Sunak's intentions. I've no idea why they did that. They didn't consult me in advance of it. But of course, I'm ready to assist any legitimate British interest. I stress the word legitimate, but I think it's an entirely legitimate demand of the Yemeni government that Rishi Sunak and Britain should send an aid convoy directly by land into Gaza in exchange for being allowed to salvage the sunken British oil tanker. I've let it be known that if I can be helpful, I'm ready to be helpful, even though the request assistance from the Houthis had nothing to do with me. I've got to say that, or someone might come bursting through the door, arresting me for somehow being in touch with the people who sank the oil tanker. I am not. But I'm ready to help. The demand for aid in the Gaza Strip is not, of course, something that any right-thinking person could deny. After all, children, now dozens of them, have literally starved to death. Yes, in 2024, starved to death in the Gaza Strip over the last few days. Some of them skeletal horror pictures of the kind last seen when the glorious Red Army smashed down the gates of Auschwitz and liberated the surviving prisoners of the Nazi beasts, the Jews and others who were holocausted in the death camps of Nazi Germany. Some of these pictures are too much to bear. Many people can no longer look at them. Many people in power apparently have never looked at them. Otherwise, they would not be as aghast as they at least pretend to be when comparisons are made between these two horror stories in the last less than 100 years. The death camps in 1940s, in Poland, in Germany itself, elsewhere in occupied Europe, in Ukraine, in Babi Yar, in the death pit, where it was up close and personal, and where the SS lounged, smoking, while their Ukrainian allies massacred the Jews in their scores of thousands, walking on top of the bodies to finish off anyone who seemed to have a flicker of life left. Of course, in terms of quantum, what's happening in Gaza cannot be compared to the Holocaust. 6 million Jews alone died in the Holocaust. Tens of millions of people died at the hands of the Nazi beasts. That has not happened in Gaza. But the intention is just the same. It's a genocidal intention. And the character of the suffering is just the same. If you starve a baby to death in Gaza, it looks just like a starving baby in one of the death camps of the Holocaust. If you mercilessly cut down with shot and shell, rocket and missile, from land, from sea, from air, a captive people in a cage, what is the difference between that and what happened in the Warsaw Ghetto? And what is the difference between the uprising of the Jews in the Warsaw Uprising and the uprising of the Palestinian people in the face of the genocide which the ICJ, the highest court in the world, has already found to be a plausible description of Israeli conduct in the Gaza Strip? Nobody wants to know about that in Britain. Nobody televised the ICJ deliberations, not even their finding, when they sent Israel for trial on charges of genocide and issued a list of peremptory directives that Israel must immediately comply with, which would have stopped the killing, but which has not stopped the killing. Now, Joe Biden, with his ice cream cone, about to describe the State of the Union in the American capital, Washington, D.C., just about now, certainly within the next few hours, he keeps saying there's going to be a ceasefire. Laughing gas, Kamala Harris, says that we must have an immediate ceasefire for 6 weeks, at which point the killing would begin again. I say finally to you, I've seen too many ceasefires. I've been in this Palestine cause for more than 50 years. I've seen ceasefires come and I've seen them inevitably go. We need much more than a ceasefire in Gaza. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night on the mother of all talk shows.